put her positions up and really put them to the test? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. So Campagna is an environmental scientist and business owner, and she said that that by evading debates, the thing was Gabbard is preventing constituents from holding her accountable for her sketchy alliances with foreign dictators. Her voting record and her international policy would certainly crack her front-facing persona, and I know she does not want that to happen, Campagna said. It's a little bit interesting here, trying to really put her best foot forward, really. Campagna is, I don't hope I'm pronouncing that right, but she is really putting in she's putting out, what I'm trying to say, she's putting out her best foot forward. She's putting her best foot forward here, really going all in on Gabbard. So if elected, Campagna would be the first Native Hawaiian woman in Congress. She is campaigning on issues like bettering the environment and alleviating homelessness, along with staples of the progressive movement like the Medicare for All and campaign finance reform. So, I mean, she's pretty... Gotta applaud that platform. She is a pretty solid progressive here. It's not just Campagna who thinks Gabbard's participation in a debate is the key to a democratic process. 76% of likely primary voters said Gabbard has an obligation to debate her political rivals, according to a recent Honolulu Star Advisor poll. So pretty much like saying, please debate, please debate, so we can really put your position to the test. It's not like that we hate you or anything like that, but we just want to see what you have to offer in comparison to Campagna. So it's pretty simple situation. She herself, Gabbard, has acknowledged the importance of political debate. In 2015, as vice chair of the DNC, she called for additional Democratic presidential debates beyond the 6 that were scheduled. She later said she was disinvited from the first one as retaliation from her calls for debate. It's very dangerous when we have people in positions of leadership who use their power to quiet those who disagree with them, Gabbard said at the time. When I signed up to be vice chair of the DNC, no one told me I would be relinquishing my freedom of speech and checking it at the door. Wow. So, how does Gabbard really feel on debates? When she's the one who's in a position of leadership, she doesn't want to be challenged, and that's the situation that she is dealing with now. Yeah. That year, Gabbard made an early endorsement of Bernie Sanders, which led her to step down from her role at the DNC. That, combined with a consistently left voice on domestic issues like healthcare and in the environment, she has fostered a reputation as one of the more progressive House Democrats. She has been endorsed by Our Revolution Hawaii, Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, and a number of labor unions. Our Revolution Hawaii is enthusiastic to announce our endorsement for Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, said the group in a statement. Tulsi is a courageous representative who serves our country in uniform while fighting for her constituents on many of the progressive issues our revolution stands for, including the rejection of campaign contributions from political action committees and her work on the work for criminal justice reform, affordable housing, and healthcare, and so much more. Outside of cultivating her image as anti-interventionist, however, Gabbard has urged the continuation of the so-called war on terror. Former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon reportedly arranged her November 2016 meeting with President Donald Trump, and former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke has praised some of her foreign policy positions. That's a little bit disturbing, to say the least. When David Duke is a fan of your foreign policy position, that's definitely a little bit strange. So yeah, this is davidduke.com for human freedom and diversity, which is kind of a joke. Yeah, so Tulsi Gabbard for Secretary of State. This is literally the head of the headline of this. So on Monday, Donald Trump met with Tulsi Gabbard. The article begins in the website. So in particular, she is unique in being a strong and principled opponent of any intervention in Syria, which is good. She wants the United States to stop supporting ISIS and other rebel groups that let the Russians, Iranians, and Hezbollah help President Assad defeating jihadists and end the Syrian civil war, which is more an armed invasion than a real civil war. This is exactly the right approach. That's a little bit disturbing. Okay. I'm not really sure that this is very good when David Duke is endorsing her foreign policy positions. Anyway, Gabbard, she has a clear electoral advantage. Not only she is a popular incumbent, but also as of July 22nd, she has raised $1.2 million this election cycle with more than $2 million of cash on hand, according to the Federal Election Commission filings. Campagna, meanwhile, has raised only about $27,000. Anthony Tony Austin, a small business owner who is also running for the primary, has raised $555. Nonetheless, voters in district are beginning to express their discontent with her record, particularly in the arenas of foreign policy and human rights. In May, the Hawaii State Teachers Association, the fourth largest union in the state, put its support behind Campagna. HSTA President Corey Rosenly said in a news conference that Gabbard has not defended human and civil rights during her time in Congress. Citing her 2017 visit with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and her failure to denounce Assad's chemical attack on his own people. Rosenly told the Honolulu Civil Beat that Gabbard is fine on education, but that the union cannot get past her continued lack of fighting for human and civil rights. Probably something pretty important to teachers who are supposed to teach that in our schools. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this whole entire situation plays out. So Tulsi Gabbard, attractive, strong, relatively progressive, or actually very progressive on domestic issues, but has a little bit of work to do. Just say that on foreign policy. That's just the least of our problems. Anyway, we now have to get to another social media controversy that's not the best of things that we really do kind of hate to talk about. But anyway, it happens. Yesterday, the New York Times announced it had hired someone by the name of Sarah Jeong, who I've never heard of before, who is by all accounts an extremely talented tech reporter, as the newest member of its editorial board. Today, Jim Hoft, who was once accurately called the dumbest man on the internet by Media Matters, which is a pretty grand title, just to say the least, published a collection of Jeong's old tweets, which he deemed racist filth. The tweets were not racist. They were jokes about white people, which is a different thing that is not racism. Among Jeong's supposed defenses saying that white men are bullshit, she couldn't enjoy Breaking Bad because the premise is just white people being miserable, and it must be so boring to be white. These tweets really have seemed to be assembled by a Twitter user named, ironically, Garbage Human. Yeah, so it seems like Garbage Human made a pretty bad contribution to the discourse, so thank you for that. Good job. The worst people in America quickly took up the cause. Conservative news sites, ranging from Fox News to the Daily Caller, screamed about Jeong's racist tweets. Then the Times and Jeong herself issued statements about the matter. She says, I have a statement. This is her statement. As a woman of color on the internet, I face torrents of online hate, often in this vein. Saying, quote, some of the tweets she gave as an example, if I saw you, I would sock you right in your lesbian face, and shut the F up, you dog-eating gook, which is really quite strange. Just a great burn there. I engaged in what I thought of at the time as counter-trolling while it was intended as satire. I deeply regret that I mimicked the language of my harassers. These comments were not aimed at a general audience, but because the general audiences do not engage in harassment campaigns, I can understand how hurtful these comments are out of context and would not do it again. New York Times really effed this one up. Instead of ignoring the ridiculous complaint and letting it die, which it really would have, because of really who the F cares about what the Gateway Pundit is doing? Like, really no one. Like, who do you, like, even right-wingers don't read the Gateway Pundits. Like, no one really cares about the Gateway, like Jim Hoft, no one cares about him. It's just really some incredible stuff. It's staggering how few people care about the Gateway Pundit. But, like, I've never heard of Sarah Jeong before. Sure, she's all right. She's edgy, it seems, which is cool. I like edgy people. But, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not that big of a deal. So it seems like she was just trying to be a Twitter troll for a little bit, and it was against white people. Like, are we really telling ourselves we're going to get torn up by this? Like, are we really kidding? Like, we're going to get torn up by this? Come on. Like, they should have ignored that. Now, according to the Times, it is fair to say that being rude about white people serves to feed the vitriol we often see too often on social media, and that her tweets represent a type of rhetoric at all, not just about jokes, nothingness, completely mundane, and honestly quite boring observations that have no wider importance or meaning. Do we think Sarah Jung actually enjoys chasing down and bullying old white men for fun? Do we think she earnestly wants to cancel white people? No, because that doesn't mean when you say cancel, it doesn't mean you want to do genocide too. Like, you don't want to, like, she doesn't want to eradicate white people. Like, can we chill? Jesus. And it'll be good to have someone edgy for once on the New York Times opinion page. Like, it's really boring. Speaking of other people on the New York Times opinion page, Andrew Sullivan. Great stuff. Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Andrew Sullivan, a bologna sandwich with a British accent, has weighed in on tech writer Sarah Jung's hiring to the New York Times in a new piece for the New York Magazine. He used the word neo-Marxist twice. It was terrible. Sullivan is writing for a magazine that this month will publish an essay by Steve Bannon about Donald Trump defines racist, a label he sticks Jung with as a vicious hatred of an entire group of people based only on their skin color. He goes then on goes through a series of retweets, which we just talked about. He says, "I can't say I'm offended by this. It's even mildly amusing, if in fact a little bonkers." Sullivan writes, "One might venture a guess that he is actually laughing. Who knows? Maybe. But it does reveal a worldview in which white people, all of them, are cultural parasites and contemptibly dull. Like, no one else has that worldview. Like, we didn't... Are you just finding this out now, that some people think white people are dull and cultural parasites? Like, I wouldn't go as far to say cultural parasites, but dull? You never heard that one before? Are you kidding? All right, let's get real." Yeah. Believing that this is in any way comparable to genocide and institutional racism perpetrated by white people against non-white people in America and a lot of the Western world is a patently ahistorical view, but Sullivan already knows this. The history of racism in the United States has frequently been explained to him by much smarter people every time he says or does something racist, such as publishing experts from the bell curve, a thing, by the way, he continues to be unrepentant about doing. But yes, Sullivan goes there. A little bit more disturbing is what you might call illuminationist rhetoric. No, it's a meme. Language that wishes an entire race be wiped off the face of the earth. # cancel white people, or white people have stopped breeding. You'll all go extinct soon. That was my plan all along. Those are some of your tweets. One simple rule I have about describing groups of human beings is that I try not to use a term that equates them with animals. That's great. Yeah, that's right. Sullivan believes Jung's tweet that white men are canceled is a racist and implicit call for genocide. One might even call it white genocide, which has no racist connotations either, or historically, or contemporarily. Not at all. It's not like Richard Spencer's favorite word. No, not at all. Like, do we really know? Like, are we really serious? Anyway. Yeah, meanwhile, Sullivan has less than 10 days before he has turned to the tender young age of 50. So this is him talking about this. This is him talking about some of his thoughts about people with Asian accents. I'm English by origin. As a people, we will never stop giggling at funny names in Asian accents. So yeah, that's his take on Asian accents. They're very funny. Asian people, very, very funny folk. Those Orientals, so hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that's all. It's all well and good. That's his take on the matter. And to give Sullivan some credit, though, he does at one point explain the correct position on all this, aside from his bonkers assertion that he believes that the left believes women cannot be racist. Unfortunately, he does not. He only does this so that he can say that his view is wrong and that this view, the correct view, is wrong, and people hand-wringing over this perceived oppression of people, white people, are right. But the alternative view, that of today's political left, is that Jung definitely cannot